Yo, what's going on, yo? I'm JB Hoops, and today I'm going to be grading every single team's draft classes this year. I'm just going to go in alphabetical order of the cities. So starting it off with the Atlanta Hawks, they took AJ Griffin at 16 and then Tyrese Martin at 51. And I'm giving the Hawks an A- for this draft. I really love the AJ Griffin pick. He slid in the draft and they scooped him up. He'll definitely be a great shooter. He has some upside as a self-creator. And I think if he gets some opportunity with the Hawks, he's going to be a really good player. Has a ton of upside, and at pick 16, that's a great selection. And then at 51, they took Tyrese Martin. I'm not too familiar with his game, but I think he'll be a guy who fits that 3-and-D mold, and the Hawks desperately needed them type of guys. So for me, the Hawks are getting an A- for this draft. Next up are the Boston Celtics, and I'm giving them a D. They took JD Davison at 53, and whilst the pick this late doesn't really have many expectations, I just am not a big fan of this pick at all. JD Davison definitely could use a lot more time developing, but I would have preferred if the Celtics took a guy like John Montero or Julian Champagnie, so I'm not really a big fan of this pick here, so I give them a D. Next up are the Charlotte Hornets, and they got Mark Williams at 15 and then Bryce McGowens at 40, and I'm giving them a B+ grade for this draft. I think this is a really solid class for them. I would have preferred if they kept Duren at pick 13, but they did end up getting the center they probably wanted in Mark Williams. I just think Jalen Duren could have been their franchise center, and he probably has a lot more upside than Mark Williams, but Mark Williams is NBA ready, so I understand the pick. And then Bryce McGowens at pick 40 is a steal and an excellent value pick. He could be a really good piece for them going forward. So I'm giving the Charlotte Hornets a B+. The Chicago Bulls took Dalen Terry at 18. I'm giving this pick a C+. I guess he helps their defense out, but I think him and Ayo Dosunmu are very alike, and they definitely could have used some defensive help in the front court. I thought EJ Liddell to the Bulls was basically a given, so I was really shocked when he slid into the second round. And I personally think he probably should have been the pick at 18, but I think Dalen Terry is going to be a really good player. I'm just not sure about the Bulls taking him, especially at 18. So I'm giving this pick a C+. Next up are the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is a very interesting draft class. They took Ochai Agbaji at 14, then Khalifa Diop at 39, Isaiah Mobley at 49, and then Luke Travers at pick 58. I did not really like what the Cavs did in this draft. I'm giving them a D+. I think Ochai Agbaji at 14 is a solid pick, but it is a bit of a reach. I think they could have gone with a guy like Tari Eason or Malachi Branham. Diop at 39 I think is excellent value, but the Cavs just didn't really need any more bigs, especially since Isaiah Mobley seemed almost a guarantee to be drafted by them. I think Diop will be stashed, but I would have preferred if he got some opportunity somewhere else because I think he's amazing. But back onto the Cavs draft, so with their final pick, they took Luke Travers. He's a solid pickup at the end of the draft. I'm not sure he has much of an NBA future due to his limited shooting ability, and I think shooting is specifically what the Cavs needed, so I'm giving their 2022 draft class a D+. Next up are the Mavericks, and I'm giving them an A+. They took Jaden Hardy at 37, and I think that's one of the biggest steals in this class. I had him ranked at 10 on my final big board, and I really think he has star potential. And I definitely think this pick is security for if Jalen Brunson is to leave. And honestly, that wouldn't be so bad because it'd give more of an opportunity to Jaden Hardy. But even if he stays, Hardy could provide them with some much needed secondary creation and offense off the bench. So I'm giving Dallas an A+ for this draft. Next up are the Denver Nuggets, and I'm giving them a C+. I didn't really like both of the Nuggets' first round picks. I feel like there were much better players still available, but I guess they at least got some defensive wings in Christian Brown at 21 and then Peyton Watson at 30. But I really love the value of Ishmael Kamagate at 46. I think he can be a great backup big in the NBA, giving them some energy, defense, and athleticism in the front court. But because of their two iffy first round picks, I'm just going to give them a C+. Next up are the Detroit Pistons. They got Jaden Ivey at 5, Jalen Duren at 13, and then Gabriel Procida at 35. I'm definitely giving the Pistons draft an A++++. The Pistons definitely won the draft. I don't know much else to say. They lucked out heavily getting Jaden Ivey at 5, and then they were able to trade a distant Milwaukee first for Jalen Duren, which I think is great value. I really think Jalen Duren can be their long-term center, and they now also have enough cap space to go after a guy like Miles Bridges. And then I also think Procida is a great get in the second round. He's a really good shooter and athlete, and I don't think Pistons fans could be any happier with their draft. So I'm definitely handing them an A+. The next team is the Golden State Warriors. They took Patrick Baldwin Jr. at 29, Ryan Rollins at 44, and then Guy Santos at 57. I'm giving their draft class an A-. The Warriors came out of the draft really well. They got Patrick Baldwin Jr., who is a high upside long-term project, but I think Ryan Rollins at 44 is the biggest part of this I like. I think he'll be able to earn minutes and be impactful for the Dubs as a backup guard for Steph. And then Guy Santos at 57 is solid. He's a really good shooter. I'm just not sure he'll join the Warriors for a few years, if ever. But with them top 2 picks, I really like what the Warriors did here, so I'm giving them an A-. The Houston Rockets also did amazing in this year's draft, coming out of it with Jabari Smith Jr. at pick 3, Tari Eason at pick 17, and then Ty Washington Jr. at 29. I'm giving them an A+. They really did exceptional with this draft. Since Paolo Banchero went with the first pick, the Rockets ended up with Jabari Smith, who was probably a better fit with their guys. And then with the 17th pick, they got one of my guys in Tari Eason. He'll be a great defensive-minded forward to pair with the Rockets scorers. I also think he has a ton of upside. And then Ty Washington Jr. at the end of the first round is just a steal. He's a lottery-type talent, and he'll be a great combo guard to pair with Jalen Green if the KPJ at point guard doesn't pan out. But otherwise, he'll be a reliable guard off the bench, and I really love what the Rockets did in this year's draft, so I'm definitely giving them an A+. Next up are the Indiana Pacers. They took Benedict Mathurin at 6, Andrew Nembhard at 31, and then Kendall Brown at 48. I'm giving them a B+ for this draft. Benedict Mathurin was a really solid selection at 6. I thought they could have taken a swing on a guy like Shaedon Sharpe, but Mathurin should be a good shooter and play finisher. He's also a pretty underrated passer. The main pick that confused me was Nembhard at 31. I thought they'd take a swing on a high upside creator like Jaden Hardy, but what really makes up for it is the excellent selection of Kendall Brown at pick 48. I just think that's a steal. He can defend, he's an insane athlete, and I think they needed a forward and they got them one, so I'm giving them a B+ for this year's draft. Next up, onto the Clippers. They took Moussa Diabate at 43. I'm giving this selection a C-. I think the Clippers probably needed a guard like Alondes Williams here, but if they do believe in the game of Jason Preston, who they selected last year, I think this pick makes a lot more sense. I'm not sure Diabate will be ready to play this season, but he should be a really good defender and big man in the future, so I'm giving this pick a C- for now. The Lakers had pick 35 and they took Max Christie Jr. out of Michigan State. I'm giving this selection a B. I do like this pick, and whilst Max Christie wasn't great last season, I believe he'll be a really good shooter in the NBA, and the Lakers finally get someone who won't be a cone on the defensive end. I definitely would have preferred if they went with a guy like EJ Liddell here, as he is much more NBA ready and more versatile and impactful as a defender, but in taking Max Christie, they potentially get a two-way wing, which they desperately needed, so I'm going to give this pick a B. The next team is the Memphis Grizzlies, and I'm giving them an A-. They took Jake LaRavia at 19, David Roddy at 23, Kennedy Chandler at 38, and then Vince Williams Jr. at 47. The Grizzlies had a very solid draft. I'm just not a massive fan of all their picks. I do feel like they took 3 guys who play very similar roles. I really like Jake LaRavia, and I think he'll be in the rotation straight away. And then Kennedy Chandler will be a good backup guard if Tyus Jones leaves. And then I'm also a huge believer in Vince Williams Jr. I think he'll be a great wing who can give you a bit of everything. I'm just very unsure of how David Roddy fits into everything. I think taking him at 23 was one of the biggest reaches in the draft. I would have preferred them to go with a guard, providing them with some creation next to Ja, like Jaden Hardy for example, or maybe even a bigger center to pair long term with Jaren Jackson Jr. But they still drafted a lot of talented guys. I just think there was a few better options to go with. But in saying that, I'm still going to grade their draft an A-. The Miami Heat had pick 27 in this draft and they took Nikola Jovic. I'm giving this selection an A. I really like this pick. Jovic is a guy I can see thriving in the Miami Heat system. I think that one of the best situations he could have landed in, as they would be better than anybody at hiding him on the defensive end. Hopefully the Heat give him some on-ball reps because that's when I think he's at his best. But at pick 27, regardless of what his role is, I think that's an excellent value selection. So I'm giving the Heat an A grade for this pick. Next up are the Bucks. They took Marjon Beauchamp at 24 and then Hugo Besson at 60. I'm giving their draft an A-. I think Marjon Beauchamp is a steal at 24. He'll be a great guy to have off their bench. I think he has more upside than he's given credit for. I think he has potential to be a self-creator of sorts in the NBA, and he will also just be a really good cutter on the Bucks. I'm also a big fan of Besson with the final pick in this draft. I think he would give them much needed creation off the bench. They definitely could have drafted a backup point guard this season since Besson will be stashed. But long term, if he does end up coming over, he should be a nice young piece for them. So I'm giving the Bucks an A-. Next up are the Minnesota Timberwolves. They took Walker Kessler at 22, Wendell Moore Jr. at 26, Josh Minor at 45, and then Matteo Spagnolo at 50. I'm giving their draft a C+. For a team with this many picks, I really thought the Wolves would be able to do better in the draft. Walker Kessler at 22 is just terrible. They obviously drafted for need, but I don't think he'll be good enough to get enough minutes to even make an impact. Wendell Moore Jr. is a nice pickup, but at 26, even that's a bit of a reach. I'm a big fan of Minot, so I think them taking him at 45 is great, but I also don't think he's going to get much opportunity. And then Mateo Spaniolo at 50 is a good pickup, as they don't really have a backup point guard, but I think he's going to be a draft and stash player anyway. But I think Wendell Moore Jr. will be able to be that backup guard, but them taking Walker Kessler at 22 is just disgusting, so that's why they get a C+ for this year's draft. The Pelicans took Dyson Daniels at pick 8, EJ Liddell at 41, and then Carlo Matkovic at 52. I'm giving their draft an A. I think they really had an excellent draft. Dyson Daniels at pick 8 is perfect. They needed another facilitator, and Daniels will be that for them. But he's also an excellent defender who will be able to take some pressure off of Herb on that end. And I'm also just really high on Dyson Daniels' potential, probably biased. And then at 41, they took EJ Liddell, which is one of the biggest steals in the draft. I thought for sure he was going to be a top 25 pick, so him falling to 41 is just crazy. And then at 52, they took Carlo Matkovic. I think that's a solid pick. He's an energetic big man, can block shots, run the floor, dunk. He'll probably stay overseas for a couple years, but I think he is good enough to play at the NBA level, so that's a very solid pick in the late second round. So I'm giving the Pelicans an A for their draft this year. The Knicks took Trevor Keels at 42, and I'm giving this pick a B-. I'm not really grading the whole draft, I'm just grading their actual selections. So I really like this Trevor Keels pick at 42. I think he'll be someone who's really solid defensively, and then offensively he can run the pick and roll, and I think he'll get a lot of time to develop in the G League. They did also trade pick 11 for 3 heavily protected future first round picks, which I think is a decent move, but they probably should have just taken someone at 11. But it does just give them more draft capital to use in future trades, or just make selections later on. So I'm giving the Knicks draft a B-. Next up are the Thunder. They took Chet Holmgren at pick 2, Ousmane Dieng at 11, Jalen Williams out of Santa Clara at 12, and then Jalen Williams out of Arkansas at 34. And I'm giving the Thunder an A- for this draft. I think they significantly added to their young core. Chet at 2 was a no-brainer. Then they took Ousmane Dieng and Jalen Williams at 11 and 12, which are pretty nice picks. Dieng is another long-term, high-upside wing who can create for himself and for others. And Jalen Williams is kind of similar. He'll be able to play multiple positions, playing on or off the ball. And then I also really like their second-round pick in Jalen Williams out of Arkansas. He'll be a really good defensive-minded big to pair with Chet Holmgren in the front court. He'll be able to take on the stronger matchups and give them even more playmaking and length, which after this draft they just have so much of now. So I'm giving the Thunder's draft an A-. Next up are the Orlando Magic. Surprising a lot of people, they took Paolo Banchero at 1 and then Caleb Houston at 32. I'm giving them an A for this draft. I really like Paolo Banchero and I was a big advocate for him going number 1. They did what they needed to do in this draft and I'm really happy they took Banchero at 1. I think he fits a lot better with their roster and I think he has the potential to be their number 1 option and their go-to scorer, which I think they needed to complete their team. Him and Franz could form one of the best forward combos in the NBA, and then Caleb Houston at 32 is a decent selection as well. It was probably a bit of a reach, but he can shoot the ball, has great size, and I think he can be really good in the NBA. But this grade is largely carried by their number 1 pick in Paolo Banchero, which I am a massive fan of, so I'm giving them an A. Next up are the Trailblazers. They took Shaedon Sharpe at pick 7 and then Jabari Walker at 59. I'm giving their draft a B+. I think it was very solid. They took the mystery prospect in Shaedon Sharpe at 7, and whilst Dyson Daniels probably would have been a better fit with his size and defense, I liked how they betted on Shaedon Sharpe's star upside, and I think it would be a really good piece for them if Dame does end up leaving. And then Jabari Walker at 59 is just a steal. He's a versatile defender who can space the floor, and I think he'll be impactful for them off the bench if he's given some opportunity. So I'm giving the Blazers draft a B+. Next up are the Sacramento Kings. They took Keegan Murray with pick 4, and I'm grading this draft pick a D. The Kings really kinged. I'm just so disappointed with them. I really thought they were going to trade the pick, but they did end up taking Keegan Murray at 4 over Jaden Ivey. Ivey was just by far the better prospect, and I think they should have taken him irrespective of fit, because what has De'Aaron Fox really done for them? I think they should have traded him last season, kept Halliburton, but it is what it is. I don't think the Kings are really going anywhere with this squad, and I really don't think Keegan Murray will do much to change their direction, so I'm giving the Kings a D. The San Antonio Spurs had a great draft. They took Jeremy Sohan at pick 9, Malachi Branham at 20, and then Blake Wesley at 25. I'm giving them an A for this draft. I think they did really well. Sohan at 9 was a little unexpected. I honestly thought they were going to go with Jalen Duren, but Sohan does make a lot of sense now that I think they're setting up their team to make a run at DeAndre Ayton. Then they used their other 2 selections on Malachi Branham and Blake Wesley, and I think they were both great value picks. Both of them could have been lottery picks. That has made their backcourt very crowded, so I do expect them to move a few of their guards, potentially Malachi Branham or Blake Wesley as well. But overall, their draft was excellent, so I'm giving them an A. The Toronto Raptors are the second last team in this video. They took Christian Koloko at 33, and I'm giving this pick a B. I like this pick for the Raptors. They definitely needed a point guard or a center, and Christian Koloko was a very solid pick up there. I'm not sure he'll be ready to be impactful right away, but it is still a good selection. I just think they still might try and trade for a center, but for now I'm giving this pick a B. Now on to the final team in this video, we got the Washington Wizards. They took Johnny Davis at pick 10 and then Yannick Sosa at 56. I'm giving them a B for this draft. I think they did really solid. I really like Johnny Davis's two-way value, and I definitely think he was the safe pick at 10. They still desperately need a point guard. I think Beal can be solid if he does re-sign, but they'll still have to sign or trade for another facilitator. And then I really like Yannick Sosa at pick 56. He'll be a draft and stash guy. He is one of the youngest guys in this class, but I truly believe he has depoy upside. His speed and mobility is just insane. So I think the Washington Wizards did pretty solid with the picks they had, so I'm giving them a B for this year's draft. Alright, that is the video. I'm losing my voice right now, so if I sounded weird, it's because of that. Anyway, that's all I got. I got more videos coming soon, so stay tuned. I think I might do a Summer League series if you want to see that. But that's all I got for this one. Like the video, subscribe, comment. Almost at 1,000, so get me there right now. JB Hoops.